Hi, everybody. It's Headlines with Ron, where we try to add a little context and commentary to what's being reported in the news, what's being served to us, so we can understand maybe what's really going on or some of the ideas behind what's being printed in the media. Well, not printed anymore, just thrown onto the internet, I guess. And first, I wanted to talk about this thing, supposedly a new pandemic that is ramping up. We know just a week ago, China was saying there was nothing unusual there, nothing different, but apparently there's some sort of pneumonia phenomenon starting. We have Europe on alert. So here's a conspiracy theory. And I try to explain this. I don't believe this, and I don't think the studies that have been done on voting in the 2020 election confirm this. But this is the theory. See, now, if you believe that the 2020 election between Trump and Biden was stolen because something about false ballots or voting machines, you're crazy. There's nothing like, there was never any evidence to that at all. And those were things that were floated in the press in the wake of the election, and a lot of people just believe in them because they want to believe in them. However, from a certain perspective, you could say people would feel that there were unfair things in the way the 2020 election was held. And that theory is that because of COVID and the lockdown, laws were changed to allow different ways of voting, more mail-in voting, more absentee balloting, more what they called the no excuse absentee balloting. Because in some place it was like you could only vote absentee if you had a reason, like maybe you were overseas, or you were sick or elderly or a shut-in, this sort of a thing, maybe a senior in a nursing home. But a normal person who would just say, well, I don't want to spend time on that day standing in a line with people, those people were not allowed. So in certain areas, you have this no excuse absentee balloting. And the theory is, the allegation is that because canvassers were allowed to go all over the cities and into every apartment building and find every single person and give them an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot and collect all these votes weeks before the election, they were able to mobilize people in a way that had never been mobilized before. And the vote turnout in the 2020 election was spectacularly high. You know, Trump got the most votes of anyone had ever gotten, except for Biden, who beat him. So, and, in all of these areas that we say inner city areas, where Biden was massively outpolling President Obama, a black man. Now, why would someone like Biden do that? The charge is that they were able to canvass and collect all these votes. So some people say this was the wrong thing because it got people who were not invested in the system and who never would have voted to vote. Of course, I think most people would say, hey, it's great to get everybody to vote. And, we ought to all be able to vote by email and send in our vote that way. But I guess, again, it's from a certain perspective, people were saying the system in 2020 was changed with the excuse of COVID to allow all this massive absentee balloting and collection of people's votes who were going to oppose Trump and support Biden. So that's not even the conspiracy. The conspiracy is what's happening now, because in certain circles, they had been saying for years that before the 2024 election coming up next year, we would see this sort of a thing. We would see a new epidemic be ramped up so that the same sort of massive mail-in and no excuse absentee balloting, maybe even to a greater degree, could be done in 2024 to ensure they collect every single vote they can to stop Trump. So this is what people would be abuzz about in certain forums, depending on your perspective, craziness or patriots who now, and what will happen is these people on the right will say this is all fake. They will say that this is something that is created by the government, or it's a kind of conspiracy in the lead up to try to steal the election again in 2024. But I don't think anybody would go so far to say that all that extra balloting was stealing the election. I think people would say, well, it's good to get disenfranchised people voting. Again, maybe from a certain perspective. If you're an old-style politician, you'd say, well, why should suddenly they change the rule to add all these extra ballots just to disenfranchise one guy? See, that from a perspective, you could say that. So I'm not saying either way. I'm just saying this is what is behind. And this is why you are going to hear people say this is all fake. And they're going to resist this time very strongly any kind of government lockdowns and new vaccination rounds, all based on this election stuff. See how crazy it is where these world events have gotten entangled in politics. That's what's happened in the U.S. Here we have a Munger dead. I do talk about Warren Buffett. That's one of the richest guys in the world, famous investor. All of his theories, you should read about him. Super interesting guy. Anything about this guy and Munger, the people around him, really interesting. A lot of good books. I know I've talked about in the past where we have the books about Warren Buffett's style, written by his former daughter-in-law, stuff like about how to read a balance sheet. It's real good stuff for anybody if you want to be an entrepreneur. If you've only been a wage slave, giving your resume away, starting to think in terms of being a board member, looking at balance sheets, investing the way that Warren Buffett does, not on the dips, the ups and downs of the market, but on the value of the company over time. All really good. This is a good area to get into if you are interested in being more than a 9-to-5er. We've talked a little bit about this. U.S. has huge debt. It's underwritten by selling bonds. This has sort of dried up. Fewer people wanting to buy them. And how this parallels other downturns in the economy. Has been a long time, longer than normal for one of these cyclical downturns. U.S. has racked up $33 trillion in the national deficit, at least something around that. And this Semaphore is a good site. They do have their own little context and commentary here. They do have some equivocations of this, saying there are still lots of people with deep pockets who want to buy bonds. Lots of hedge funds that play with the ups and downs of the bonds for arbitrage, that sort of thing. So economics is it's difficult to get a grasp on, but I fear in the next coming years it's going to be an issue that's going to be on all our minds, because this kind of fake prosperity that we've had, that both Republicans and Democrats have participated in with the printing money, I don't think it can go on forever. Here a little bit more about Trump. Robert De Niro wanting to blast Trump. Nothing new. Biden approval at 45. I think a few days ago, another poll showed him at 37. These are all worrying things for the Democrats. Bookstores shun RFK Jr.'s books. I always try to mention him, not because I agree with him, but because I get a lot more views. I don't know why when I put a tag for RFK Jr., he has his supporter. He's a former Democrat, someone from the famously Democratic and liberal Kennedy family, son of RFK Sr., who was assassinated in '68. It was thought that one of these Kennedy boys in the next generation would become the next great hope of the Democrats. None of them have, and RFK has Jr. here is long been espousing or wanting to talk about conspiracy theories, such as that vaccines don't work. And here's his new book is about something that it looks like it may have some actual data behind it. There were a few people, the Wuhan cover-up. It's all about, I assume, the origin of the COVID thing. After the pandemic started, immediately the government, colluded with the social media, and no one was able to say anything against vaccinations or speculate on where the virus came from. I think it was supposed to be to help misinformation, but I think in the fullness of time now with 2020 hindsight, those sorts of policies created an impression that a cover-up was being undertaken. So it's a difficult thing to balance free speech and then what is proper for government and society and curbing misinformation. Here we have a little bit more on DeSantis and Newsom. Both DeSantis on the Republican side, Newsom on the Democrat side. Obviously, they're being pushed by the bigwigs in the parties to replace Trump and Biden. Both of the front runners now, Trump and Biden, have a lot of baggage, a weird situation. They're both probably too old. Certainly Biden is, and Trump is has a lot of unforced errors, which I seem to have to say every day to explain myself. Excuse me. Something about British royalty. Not that interested right now. Is it Coke? Coke endorses Nikki Haley. These are big Republican. These are the cigar smoking guys in the back room with a lot of influence in the party. There are people like this in the Republicans, or people like this in the Democrats, and those people are interested in replacing Trump. And the Democrat side, they're interested in replacing Biden, and there's a lot of movement towards Nikki Haley since she apparently did good in one of the debates. So the powers that be in the parties, the money men, the influencers, both in terms of money and the media, would like to move Trump out of the leading spot for the presidential primaries. We talked about this a little. Texas moving to California in droves. This is obviously, this is one of those headlines that plays on the perceived conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom is that people have been leaving the higher tax liberal states of New York and California for more Republican, lower tax states of Texas. So we have different articles that say just the opposite are happening, and both sides have their statistics. Here we have North Korea takes photos of the White House with military spy satellite. As I've discussed in some previous shows, the fact that North Korea has nukes means people pay attention to them. And that's why they have them. That's why they're going to keep them. And after what's happened in the Ukraine, where everybody got Ukraine to sign an agreement to give up their nukes and for an agreement that Russia would never invade them. Then after 20 years, Russia invaded them, and the West, who were co-signers to that, they really didn't have any response. They couldn't stop it. So countries know not to give up their nukes now, and they're important for that. And you can contrast the kind of crazy hermit kingdom of North Korea with another crazy hermit kingdom of Myanmar, formerly Burma. Nobody cares about the terrible civil war that's happening there because they have abandoned their nuke program. They started up one, I think, in the early 2000s, and that was abandoned. They turned democratic for a few years, and they had a coup. Now they have a civil war. not that much interest, but the Western powers are holding out lots of big money to North Korea, and the lifting of sanctions and agreements. North Korea is always high on some of these diplomatic plans of presidential candidates. That's because they got nukes. They matter. If you have nukes, you matter. More terrible stuff coming out of Israel with the released hostages. I'm certain that some of those accounts are true, and it's incredible to imagine how many people still are supporting Hamas as a valid representative of the Palestinian people. They're not. They're a group that are controlled by foreign country, probably Iran, that took over in a coup from the legitimate Palestinian Authority. I think maybe the West, maybe Israel, maybe the United States has a problem with their messaging, because they haven't been very good at explaining some of these issues to the people and making the case for supporting Israel, supporting Gaza. On the other hand, and I have to bring this up, a lot of people say we shouldn't be giving any money to any of these foreign wars. For 8 years during the George W. Bush administration, we were all taught that wars are bad because women and children die. So we shouldn't give money and shouldn't be involved. So here we are, now we're in a Democratic administration, and we're having to give hundreds of billions of dollars away for more foreign wars. That's both sides of it. If you want to be scared of your future, scarier than any of these headlines about war and AI and everything, look at these pictures of Jimmy Carter at his wife's funeral. I won't even click on them. This is what happens when you're really elderly. We're all headed that way, one way or another. And that's if you're lucky. They say if you live to be really old, that's luck. So you can become, you can kind of decay. But that's what we are. That's life. We got to accept it. We're not anything else. But it's still scary. There's scary stuff about AI. Terrible stuff here about the future of publishing. This doesn't have directly about AI, but it talks about. Obviously, I have my book here. This is my book. This is my latest novel. There are still unknown places. It's about living and working in the concrete modern metropolis of Bangkok, Thailand, and the hopes and the fears and the yearnings, the goals, the chaos, the life and the death of people who live there. It's on Amazon. It's on Kindle. I didn't have any sensitivity readers, and hopefully it will offend you. So please read it and let me know what you think. So this ties into this article here, because if you want to be published, if you want to get an agent, the agents will all say exactly what they want, and they want diversity, they want inclusion, they want stories about underrepresented people. They not only want it in the content, they want it in the writer. So what you are and what you write about should match these sort of things. Apparently there's a market for that. So this, some of them want to make sure that you have the sensitivity readers, that everything in there is very conventional or correct in a way and no one is offended. So all of this has narrowed the path for people who really want to write literature in the old way, where you want to provoke, where you want to make people think. And this article talks about, because the major publishers are just at the whim of Twitter mobs now, who will want to cancel them over printing, the wrong thing written by the wrong person, other smaller houses willing to take a risk on real writing have sprung up, which is a good thing. What else do we have here? We got more UFO stuff. Really interesting. And I have to, some of this is whistleblowing. This is from a right-wing, rabble-rousing site, Mail Online, but it's always interesting. If not only for the bikini girls they have on the side here, or sexy pictures of stars, they got a lot of interesting stuff. But the point I always make about UFO, what can we say about context and commentary here? And what we can say is, what we can notice is the policy change. For many decades, there were lots of evidence out there. There were whistleblowers. There were a few people in Congress who wanted to raise the roof on it. But the government, along with the media, always had the pat answer that we investigated everything. There's nothing, and we're not even going to investigate more. And the public was pretty much satisfied with that. And in the past, I don't know if it's 5 or 6 years, there's been a change. The government has acknowledged these photos. They've released photos of the Tic Tac UFOs and said, there's something, we don't know what they are exactly. They've been cagey about it. So some people could say, oh, they're just drones. Well, China has a lot of technology. They don't have drones like that. So there has been a conscious policy, instead of just denying everything or covering it up as they have been. It's not a conspiracy. I mean, there's a reason for the conspiracy. That's to handle it behind the scenes, because maybe the reality of the universe we live in is so scary. You know what people would do if they knew there were other alien races, like, every planet had some civilization around it. People would, dumb humans would start worshiping them. They'd try to get the technology. Like if China got the technology from the UFO, the aliens, and they could use it against us, or we could use it against them. So there are reasons to keep it covered up, but there has been a policy shift, and I haven't quite come across any explanation as to exactly what prompted the government, the U.S. government, to make this change and acknowledge this alien aspect to our reality. So that may be a good thing to leave us on today. X-Files sort of ending. And every day we have been looking at our Art of War cards, playing cards. Each of them has an axiom from the Art of War, and we've been looking at them every day to see if there's something we can use in our own lives, business or personal. Okay, right. Here today we have muddy the water to hide the nets. Can't read it that way, but so muddy the water to hide the nets. Confuse your adversary so he cannot perceive your intentions. And the basis for this is confused adversaries make mistakes they would not make if they grasped your intentions. Very interesting. See this? Obviously, we're going to see a lot of this in politics. Who knows? Maybe we're seeing that in the UFO disclosure. We can think about how we can use that in our personal lives and our business lives to get ahead. Maybe we don't shoot our mouths off about everything we're doing to our coworkers. We don't want to show up other people and make them enemies of ourselves. But that's the Art of War for today and the headlines for today. I will see you tomorrow, and hopefully through the New Year's as we get into the primaries. And please subscribe. I'd love to get some more subscribers by the end of the year, and like this video if you like it. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.